We're kicking off today with Monday Night Raw, which started without its usual intro this week, likely because of Drew McIntyre, who completed his heel turn on last week's show. During this week's Raw, McIntyre did not get an entrance, instead speaking directly on the mic, which may be why Raw didn't have its usual introductory package. Rather than start with something upbeat and exciting before Drew's arrival, WWE kicked off the show with McIntyre being booed, setting the tone for his promo. The crux of McIntyre's promo was simple, that anyone and everyone who has turned on him now, they were never fans of his to begin with. McIntyre ridiculed Jey Uso for not apologizing to those he screwed over when part of the bloodline, and mentioned how Jey's family took away what should have been his biggest moment in Cardiff. That was, of course, a nod to Clash at the Castle, and Drew spoke about the sacrifices he and his family have made for him to be in WWE, and how Cardiff should have made it all worthwhile. Speaking about the Judgment Day, McIntyre is not an official member, but will team with the faction as the fifth man inside WarGames. McIntyre not joining isn't a surprise, as the group just inducted JD McDonough last week, and McIntyre comes across as a lone wolf kind of heel. Drew's promo was interrupted by Jey Uso, and was followed up with Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, and Cody Rhodes, and Adam Pearce was quick to quell a brawl before it got started. Pearce announced that any superstar who decides to attack will make their team lose the crucial WarGames advantage, which was to be decided later in the night. Backstage, McIntyre stepped up as the person for the match, while Jey Uso convinced Seth Rollins to let him face McIntyre with the crucial advantage on the line. Damian Priest may be the leader of the group going into Survivor Series, at least according to himself, but he gave the match to Drew despite wanting to be the one who competed. In a backstage segment after McIntyre left though, Priest warned Rhea Ripley that McIntyre better get them the advantage, already teasing issues within the faction. In a segment with the face team, Adam Pearce said that Cody Rhodes and his allies would need a fifth member to join their team by the end of the night, which prompted an Orton chant from the crowd. That chant only grew when Cody said that he had an old friend that he was confident would come through for them, which fans again took as a sign of the Viper's return. Drew McIntyre had plenty to say during this week's Raw, especially about Jey Uso, but the former WWE champion had a major botch, which fans couldn't help but notice. Explaining his heel turn, McIntyre said that Rhea Ripley gave him what nobody else could, and that was Jey Uso inside a cage, which could realistically not be further from the truth. After all, Jey and McIntyre were on opposing sides in last year's WarGames match at Survivor Series 2022, and we seriously doubt that Ripley was helping with the booking last November. That match saw the Bloodline face the Brawling Brutes, McIntyre and Kevin Owens, and while it was the Bloodline who won, McIntyre would get his hands on all in the match, including Jey. For a heel turn based on McIntyre not moving on from what happened in the past, forgetting last year's match was a huge error, one that didn't go amiss during this week's Raw. In the main event of Raw, McIntyre faced Jey Uso to decide which side would have the advantage inside WarGames, and Drew was looking to take some frustration out on Jey in the process. In a surprise, Jey gained the early upper hand on the two-time former WWE champion, but McIntyre was able to score the first near fall after a big back elbow. As the match continued though, it felt less like a main event and more like a match with a foregone conclusion, with the only big surprise being how Drew McIntyre won the match. McIntyre picked up the win clean with the Future Shock DDT instead of his usual Claymore kick, and a post-match beatdown by Drew and the Judgment Day on Jey quickly ensued. Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and Sami Zayn, all carrying steel chairs, would make the save, and after the faces cleared the ring, Cody announced that Randy Orton will be their fifth member. While expected, this got the loudest pop of the night by a considerable margin, and although Orton didn't appear in person, it won't be long before we finally see him back in the ring. At AEW Full Gear, MJF retained the AEW World Championship against Jay White, despite walking into the match with an injured leg thanks to an attack by the Guns. This injury was by all accounts a kayfabe injury, adding drama to the match with White, but that match did see the champion get legitimately hurt. WrestlePurist reports that MJF hurt his hip during the match with White and had to have his hip pop back in after the show, and is also said to have banged up his shoulder. Sean Ross Sapp would later confirm the report of MJF's hip injury, but WrestlePurists added that MJF is not expected to miss any TV time, even though he won't be wrestling. Instead, MJF will be featured in a non-wrestling role until he heals up, so while we'll be seeing plenty of the year-long champion on TV, it remains to be seen when we'll next see him in the ring. For some time, MJF has talked about a bidding war and has teased leaving AEW for WWE in the past, but it turns out that MJF's talk about being a WWE superstar is simply all talk. House of Wrestling reports that it is the belief within WWE that MJF may have quietly extended his contract with AEW, and a source in WWE has said there has been zero talk between MJF and WWE. The source emphasized the notion of Friedman becoming a free agent in the near future is incorrect, and that they believe that he is committed to AEW until 2027. When Ringside News asked their sources in WWE, they were told that this report is accurate, and since WWE believes MJF has re-signed with AEW, he's not being discussed as a potential arrival. MJF may talk a big game about a bidding war, but it appears that war ended before it even got started, and expect the salt of the earth in AEW for many years to come. In less than a month's time, Dolph Ziggler's non-compete clause with WWE will expire, and he'll be free to work anywhere he chooses. And could the former world champion soon be All Elite? On Twitter this week, a photo surfaced of Ziggler being friendly with several names working with AEW, including Big Bill, Stokely Hathaway, Justin Roberts, Jerry Lynn, and Dean Malenko. Ziggler's brother Ryan Nemeth was also in the photo, and with Dolph having so many friends in AEW, it may just be a matter of time before he inks a contract with the company. In recent weeks, Ludwig Kaiser has found himself on the wrong side of Imperium leader Gunther, a spot that Giovanni Vinci has been in before, and this week's Raw saw a major change in the faction. With Kaiser in Gunther's bad books, the Austrian has been favoring Vinci, and this week's Raw saw Kaiser booked to face Johnny Gargano. Kaiser specifically instructed Vinci not to come to ringside during the match, but Vinci disobeyed, and Kaiser ultimately lost the match in another setback for the German. Backstage, Gunther walked into Kaiser shouting at Vinci and made it clear where he stood, giving Vinci permission to handle Kaiser however he saw fit. The roles of Kaiser and Vinci in Imperium have essentially been switched, with Kaiser no longer the ring general's right-hand man, and this could be the biggest sign yet of a split. There have been teases for a while now that Kaiser could split, with many believing he has what it takes to become a single star on the main roster and, perhaps, one day, Intercontinental Champion. Whatever the future holds, there has been a big change in the pecking order of Imperium, with Vinci finding himself the number 2 man, and Gunther would have a setback of his own on Raw. Mere days ahead of Survivor Series, Gunther ate a skull-crushing finale from The Miz, and it'll be interesting to see where Gunther's head is at when he puts the title on the line this Saturday. In the latest match in Shinsuke Nakamura's feud with the Alpha Academy, the King of Strong Style took on Chad Gable in the best match of this series of bouts. To the surprise of nobody, Chad Gable looked excellent in the ring, though as for as good as he is in the ring, Gable needs to start winning matches to be taken more seriously. Tonight was not Gable's night, as he became the 3rd member of Alpha Academy to fall to Nakamura, and there was an unfortunate botch in this match, but not by either competitor. On commentary, Michael Cole referred to Chad Gable as Kurt Angle, who, like Chad, also competed in the Olympics and proved to be excellent in the squared circle. To be clear, Chad Gable is not Kurt Angle, and if Cole seriously can't tell the difference between the two, we suggest he see how much hair is on the head of both men. For some time, there's been talk about Drew McIntyre's contract, which is believed to expire in early 2024, but this week, fans got a huge sign that he's inked a new deal. This week saw WWE reveal a new poster for Bash in Berlin, which features McIntyre, which at least implies that Drew will be part of WWE's first premium live event in Germany next August. We should state that posters, like wrestling cards, are subject to change, but for the time being, WWE is making it appear that McIntyre will still be with WWE in August of next year. At AEW Wrestle Dream, Sammy Guevara suffered a concussion that has led to him being out of the ring ever since, but his return is seemingly on the horizon. Speaking to Muscle Man Malcolm, Guevara's friend Fuego del Sol said that the Spanish God's return is imminent, and we'll have to see what's next for Guevara once he's fully healed up. More from Raw, as well Jey Uso has made it clear he won't be joining the Judgment Day. It appears main event Jey still has a thing for Rhea Ripley. During Raw, Ripley was seen waving at Jey in a come-hither manner, and while most fans won't have noticed it, Jey decided to wave back. This is likely just mind games by Ripley, who is in an on-screen relationship with Dominic Mysterio, but that won't stop the Women's World Champion flirting with Jey Uso. Since arriving in AEW, MJF has won over fans with his array of skills, varying from talents in the ring to his skills on the mic. MJF has certainly become a jack of all trades in AEW, but this week, the world champion argued that wrestling fans are often too focused on one aspect of the industry. Speaking with Dr. Bo Hightower, MJF argued that fans are often too obsessed with what happens bell to bell, which he believes is a detriment. He explained, "The biggest issue with professional wrestling now, and I've stated it multiple times, are people are so overly consumed with what's going on bell to bell, at least the hardcore audiences. Normal human beings don't give a f***. They're invested in the human f***s that are in the ring. They're not necessarily invested in the moves that are happening inside of the squared circle." MJF gave the Acclaimed as an example of this philosophy, saying that while the reigning AEW Trios champions are talented wrestlers, it's their personalities and characters that have made them such massive hits and merchandise movers. Wrestling ability is of course important in wrestling, but there's plenty more that goes into making a wrestler other than their moves. And what do you think of MJF's take on things? Let us know in the comments. For the AEW Full Gear main event between MJF and Jay White, Juice Robinson wasn't by the side of his Bullet Club Gold ally, and the reason for that is that he's injured. Sean Ross Sapp confirmed that Robinson is hurt, which is why he missed Full Gear weekend, and that he'll require surgery to fix what is being reported as a back injury. It's unclear when he suffered the injury, but his most recent match was on the November 1st Dynamite, where he and the rest of Bullet Club Gold defeated MJF and the Acclaimed. Sapp's report noted that it is unclear how long he'll be out of action for, but it isn't expected to be a long, drawn-out absence, though he is likely done with wrestling for the rest of the year. Right now, details are scarce about Juice Robinson's injury, but we hope to have an update soon, and we're wishing the Bullet Club Gold member a speedy recovery from this setback. At Full Gear, the Young Bucks lost to the Golden Jets, and judging by their actions before, during, and after the match, the Jackson brothers are on their way to a heel turn. As we reported yesterday, the Bucks will be seeing a noticeable shift in their characters in the coming weeks and months, but it won't play out on being the Elite. On Twitter, Brandon Cutler, who is the mouthpiece for the Bucks, informed fans that the Bucks have finished up with the hit online series, and he did not elaborate on this decision. In our previous report, it was said that a modified format of being the Elite is part of the plan to turn the Bucks heel, and it's clear that this is still the case. The direction of the Young Bucks' future bookings in AEW remains to be seen, presenting an intriguing scenario. And what do you want to see next after their setback at Full Gear 2023? Back to Raw, and in a heavy-hitting match, Nia Jax faced Raquel Rodriguez, and it was Jax who got the win when Raquel was unable to hit her signature powerbomb. This was a decent, irresistible force meets immovable object match, as Raquel always looks her best when facing someone close to her size, so we wouldn't say no to a rematch between the two. More from Raw, and before she enters WarGames this weekend, Becky Lynch had some personal issues with Xia Li, who has made a target of the man in recent weeks. NXT Women's Champion Lyra Valkyria was in the crowd for this one, since she is also feuding with Li, and the Chinese superstar started off strong against her more high-profile opponent. At one point of the match, some of Li's face paint wiped off on Lynch in a way that it looked like the man had a huge black eye, which fortunately was not the case. Heading into the break, Li had the upper hand, and it was only after commercials that Lynch showed some signs of life, culminating with a manhandle slam and the win over Xia Li. This was a highly competitive and energetic match that made Li look a lot better than she has on the main roster up to this point. She needed a performance like this even if she ended up losing. Li having feuds on both Raw and NXT at the same time is a big step up from not being on TV at all for most of 2023, and given her performance, WWE would be wise to keep her around. Charlotte and her WarGames team attacked Damage Control at ringside after the match, and the brawl spilled into the ring before Adam Pearce and officials came out to stop them. This was a predictable brawl given how close we are to Survivor Series, but one that helped feature everybody who will be involved in what'll be a highlight of this week's show. In a backstage segment, Adam Pearce booked a fatal four-way match to decide which team gets to face Chelsea Green and Piper Niven for the women's tag team titles, with some interesting teams. Natalya and Tegan Nox, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae, and Ivy Nile and Maxine Dupree in what would have been a difficult match to manage. The match had some fun spots, but there wasn't too much to it, and while it was nice to get so many women in the ring on Raw, this was the weakest match of the night from an in-ring perspective. In the end, Nox and Natalya earned a shot at the tag team champions, and we shouldn't be surprised if a title change happens as soon as this Saturday's Survivor Series show. So that was this week's Raw, the go-home Raw before Survivor Series WarGames, and what did you think of the show? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Last week, WWE held a Sunday Stunner show in Saginaw, Michigan, and MVP walked into the show in a very generous mood. After OMOS defeated Akira Tozawa in a squash match, MVP said that he'd be willing to give $10,000 of his own money to anyone in the crowd. All they had to do was knock down the Nigerian giant. Unsurprisingly, nobody took MVP up on his offer, as topping OMOS is a feat only a select few have been able to do, and it's something Tozawa failed to do in their match. WWE will sometimes use live events to test the waters of an angle and see how the fans react to an idea before going to TV, so perhaps we'll be seeing this $10K offer on Raw soon enough. From the ring to the gridiron, as last Sunday, the New York Jets faced the Buffalo Bills, and during the game, the Jets' Sauce Gardner executed a German suplex on Bills receiver Stephon Diggs. Given that the move happened after the whistle, this resulted in a penalty, but it was still quite the moment for the millions of fans watching the game. In January of this year, Nikkita Lyons was attacked in the infamously dangerous NXT parking lot, which was a way to write her off of TV so that she could recover from a torn MCL. On Twitter, Lyons thanked her fans for their support, and when asked how her recovery is going, the popular young superstar promised that she'll be back soon enough. Before this week's episode of Raw kicked off, WWE filmed its weekly taping of Main Event, which saw multiple names from the NXT brand. Miles Bourne would come up short against Apollo Crews during the taping, while Joe Coffey defeated Von Wagner in a rare win if you've been watching Gallus' matches in NXT. WWE often uses Main Event as a proving ground to see how NXT talent fare with a bigger crowd, so perhaps it won't be long before we see some of these superstars on the main roster. And we're ending today with Anna Kiefer, who signed a next-in-line contract with WWE in 2022 after a SummerSlam weekend tryout, and recently made her debut as part of Tony D'Angelo's family. While she's yet to be given a name on TV, Kiefer's social media activity has revealed that she'll be working as Adriana Rizzo, and now WWE has trademarked the name. The filing took place on November 14th, and whatever WWE has planned for Rizzo and the family, expect to see much more of her on WWE NXT programming.